Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So grateful for Dr. King's work. And thank you to all that are tuning in tonight. We're going to be joined by Anne and her son Julian. And just really excited to share their story with you. Anne is a board member at the International Dyslexia Association Oregon branch and has an incredible story to share with her and her son. So they're going to be joining here shortly. Again, drop us a line if you have any questions. And if you're more comfortable, you can always email our branch. And just we're here to be a resource for our community. So please reach out.
Did we figure this out?
Yeah, you got it.
It's all him.
I stepped in.
You got it. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time tonight and joining. So we're with Anne and Julian.
Yeah.
And Anne is a board member of the International Dyslexia Association Oregon branch, as I mentioned earlier, and Julian, her son. And I'd love for you guys to just start. Where did this journey start? And and take us through diagnosis and just kind of how things unfolded for you.
Okay, so I guess it started probably for me in kindergarten because he had done 3 years of preschool and he felt like he should have been farther along than he was. But we got this. I mean, it's the same old story, right? We got the whole he's a boy, he's a little young, blah, blah, blah. But I have a niece and nephew who are also dyslexic. One of them is pretty severely dyslexic, so it was on the radar. And then I assumed that schools would test for it if, and then finally it was actually his kindergarten teacher who became a friend of mine, but in second grade, she was like, just so you know, they're never going to test. So if you really think he is, you should get him diagnosed yourself. And I remember, so in Washington State, there's something called LAP, which is the Learning Assistance Program, which is sort of an intervention before you go into special ed. So he had been in LAP for those few years. And then I remember the lab teacher saying, "Oh, I just did an assessment on Julian and I can't even believe he reads as well as he does." And I was like, so she basically said he has no phonemic awareness, but he just was memorizing the books. So he was moving through them.
That rote memorization was part of your skill set. Okay.
Yeah. And then and so that was the red flag for me. And I was like, okay, we're doing this. And then also Susan Barton was in town. So I heard her speak and, she lays out the story that is everybody else's story. And I just hadn't heard it before. So, I mean, she literally down to he had been in speech, from 3 years old on.
Okay.
He literally had laid out the sounds he wasn't making. I was blown away. So, so then we got him diagnosed, in March, second grade.
Okay.
And then,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so before the diagnosis, right? Before the relationship that you've had with the other students that were dyslexic, did you have an inkling that something was wrong, or did you know, or did it?
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't remember it, but from what I hear is I was starting to sense that something was wrong. Back in the day when I was younger, I used to twirl my hair when I used to get super anxious.
I did that too.
So at the time of my diagnosis, I was twirling my hair because I was obviously kind of falling behind other kids in the classroom. So I was starting to get a little anxious, but once I ended up getting diagnosed, I was actually pretty relieved. And it sounds weird, but I was excited to know that there's a reason for why I was falling behind. So.
Okay.
And not that I could control that, but but I really did try to make it just out in the open, plain, like this is just the way your brain is wired. Like it's no, and I remember telling him, we were driving in the car, and he was like, "Oh, that makes sense." Like, why? Like all my friends are reading and I'm not. So, and I think so from an early age, he didn't seem to have the shame that was attached. Just his personality just was like, okay, that's it. This is what it is, and it's not my fault, and we can move on.
Cool.
Which is very unique. And I'm not, I think, especially the kids what I see now, there's just so much anxiety and shame and all that stuff attached, and it just snowballs over time. But for him, I think that was, I literally just think it's a personality thing, and I'm not going to say.
But it also sounds like it was more of a relief, like, right? Like you kind of had to like, oh, this is why it's not working. Like, okay, cool, I got this thing. Like, we'll deal with it type attitude.
Yeah. Yeah. But and when he says he twirled his hair, he literally had a bald spot from twirling. That's how much anxiety there was. So it wasn't like a flip, It was
I got okay.
It was not good. So, and then I went to my sister-in-law, to say, what's your advice? But she lives in Connecticut, where Windward is like one city over, like the famous dyslexic school, Windward. And they have one in Manhattan, they have one in Connecticut. So she's like, oh, just send them there. And I'm like, just find a dyslexia school and send them there. I'm like, well, first of all, we don't always a year for elementary school. And there isn't one, because Park Academy was really pretty small back then. Like it hadn't really taken off the way it is now. So that's when I decided, and I had met Shelby, and she, I was like, do you think I can do this Barton thing on my own? And she was like, you can totally do this Barton thing on your own. So, when I had questions, I went to her, and she was a great mentor for me. But she also sucked me into IDA.
I was gonna say, did she recruit you? Like, did she take you to Burgerville and like do the whole nine?
Well, she took me to Phoenix. We went to my first IDA conference the fall of the year he got diagnosed. And so that's really what sparked my interest. And then she got me in.
But okay, so before IDA, I mean, to jump into it, were you nervous to kind of like, I mean, you hadn't taught before, right? Like this was.
Well, strangely enough, I had taught before. I had taught Chinese. In a former life before I had kids, I went for a couple of years and taught first year Chinese. So I kind of knew how to break language down a little bit.
Okay, so you're accustomed to that.
Yeah, I mean, but you never know how it's going to go when you're tutoring your own kid. But he was super receptive. I don't think I could have done it with my other son, but he was. I mean, he didn't like it. Don't get me wrong. He hated every single
one. What was? Give me the highlight and the low light. Give me the best part about working with mom, and then like the most challenging part.
The best part was just waking up and rolling into tutoring in my PJs. I think that was probably the best part about everything else that came along with it. So.
Amazing.
I mean, the other part for him was I would make him do it every day over the summer. So we were trying to jam it in. Because he also started playing hockey around that time. So I didn't want to find a tutor for him, because I knew that hockey was going to be important to him. So I didn't want to take that away from him, Yeah. So I just shoved it in whenever I could. And sometimes that was weekends and like every day on the summer. And
so I have two questions on it. I want to get to hockey with you in a second, but the first question on it is, and I want both of you to answer this. Did you see improvement from the day-to-day practice with that scientific-based language tutoring? Like, were you seeing results yourself, and mom, were you seeing it on your end?
I think I was definitely seeing results, especially as I started to get older and more mature. I think I started to realize that how much the tutoring actually helped. We didn't finish Barton. We didn't finish, but even without finishing it, I think it helped a lot. Just kind of as I got older, and it made me more confident, especially in the classroom, because I wasn't falling behind as much as I was before. So that was just helpful to kind of acknowledge that I was improving and that I was taking the right step in the right direction.
Very cool. And then from your perspective?
I mean, I saw
okay.
almost right away. And then at the same time that we got the diagnosis, we got a 504 plan. So,
Nice.
so working on the accommodations, I think that helped him a lot in school.
What accommodations were you using in school?
Mostly it was a lot of recording lectures, especially in middle school. So I would
Okay.
record lectures, take notes on my iPad. I used a lot of audiobooks, text to speech. I didn't really like scribes just because I don't really like someone next to me when I'm writing.
Makes sense.
So that wasn't really my deal. So I think those were mostly the two. And then sometimes I'd have someone read to me on occasions tests, and also extra time.
Yeah.
Any challenges using the accommodations? Like, did you ever feel self-conscious about having the accommodations, or were you like, hey, this is my thing and I'm gonna just own it?
That was exactly it. I was like, this is my thing. Like, if someone like kind of gives me a weird look, that's their problem. Like, I'm gonna make me successful, and so that's just kind of how I went about it.
Well, this is the end of the evolution, I'll say.
Yeah.
In elementary school, it was a struggle to remind teachers that he had these accommodations, and
Sure.
for us back, which the big end of the year state assessments, I would often have to. I mean, especially I think in fifth grade, I sort of went after them a little bit because they were saying that he couldn't get the accommodations because he wasn't getting them in class, and then I was like, well, whose fault is it that he's not getting them in class? It's not his fault.
So I want to push on this a little bit because the advocacy piece is a big part of this, right? That our students face. Obviously, early on, the parents are stepping in to advocate like yourself. Was there a point where it transitioned over to you, or how did that work?
I think it was in middle school when I started to really take charge. I think it was eighth grade is when I kind of decided that like this is my journey, and this is I kind of need to just do it on my own. So I think eighth grade was when I really started to just kind of push my teachers to say these are my accommodations. I started emailing teachers at the beginning of each year saying I want to set up a meeting just to go over my accommodations, and like it's not really going to be discussion, but I'm just going to lay out like what my accommodations are, just so you're aware that if I pull out my iPad in the class, that's what I'm doing. Or like if I ask for class notes, it's not because I'm not paying attention, but that's just one of my accommodations. So eighth grade is when I really started to take off.
So, and I will say for sixth and seventh grade, I set up those meetings. So I set up meetings with all the not the electives, but the main classes, because I want him to see that they meant, they mean to give you the accommodations. They just, have 100 kids or whatever, so they might forget. So I think setting that up and then him hearing from them that, we will totally do your accommodations. I think that was gave him more confidence to say, I don't have this. You need to give this to me, whatever. So by eighth grade, I think he had, he's all. I mean,
I just wanted to say, like, it sounds like you set up the playing field from the beginning, and you showed how it's going to work. And then in eighth grade, it sounds like you dove in and became operator. You became the quarterback of your offense there.
Yeah.
And I think, because I had been involved in IDA and been to enough conferences, I knew that was going to be the biggest problem, so that's why I was trying to set up, but like gradually give the control to him if he was ready, because I knew high school, like, it's not like they want a mom not the counselor's door saying my kid's not getting accommodation. So, So, and then also in ninth grade, I think we got the pen, right? The scan pen. 10th grade. Yeah. So by ninth grade, because there were still some times where they didn't know what to do with him, like they didn't have a reader, or they didn't know what to do with him. So we've decided to invest in the scan pen. So by 10th grade, he had the scan pen, which made everybody's life easier.
Yeah. So the scanning pen's a big thing for you then in terms of operating.
I mean, I don't have it on me. I think it's at school right now, but it's been a huge help for me, especially during tests. I can just kind of plug my headphones in and kind of do my own thing. So
that's awesome. So, and I know Shelby's a great recruiter, but there's got to be something that, like, you're obviously dealing with the challenge in your own family, but you saw a bigger picture or a bigger need to support the community. Where does that come from, and how did that evolve?
I don't know, probably just my upbringing. Like, you take care of people like who are less fortunate than you. And I just saw, because it made me think of all the people who, especially like the non-native English speakers and people who are not, well educated. I mean, I felt like I could go in as a, they're going to listen to me if I, insist on something. So, and so after he did get diagnosed and they saw the improvement, that school saw the improvement from what I was doing from the tutoring, they did actually start to ask me to volunteer tutor. I mean, I wanted to be the volunteer, just so I could like bail if I needed to.
Sure.
Had kids that nothing was really working for. They called me in to his elementary school. And so I started, that way, and doing that a little bit. And then,
Amazing.
And then eventually the principal told me that they were gonna, that they had a job opening in the lab room. So I ended up, honestly, like, ironically, in that same room. Then all those
It's so awesome. And so just commend you on the work that you're doing. I mean, for your own son, but then also for the community at large, which is so vastly needed, as we know. I want to talk to you about your outlet, hockey.
Yeah.
How big a role does that play in your life? And like, does that allow you to deal with some of the frustrations that you were having in the classroom? I know like once you had the relief that you were diagnosed, but you're still working through some hard things. Like, what was that like, being able to channel it?
It was amazing. I mean, I'm really grateful for hockey because it's pretty much led me and given me everything that I have today. I mean, it's led me to Hotchkiss, which I'm extremely grateful for, and it's also just given me an escape for everything, like you said. Just being able to kind of channel that, and like if I'm feeling any frustration, I can just go in the garage, shoot pucks, or go skate if I have that opportunity. So it's also taught me, like, being diagnosed and playing hockey around the same time allowed me to kind of transition both my values into both those things. So I now learned how to work hard in hockey and like the importance of dedication and teamwork and communication as well. And that all kind of transferred over to the classroom as things got like deeper in, and I started to kind of take more control of my work in the classroom.
Tell me about Jason.
Oh, so my my first hockey coach, his name was Jason, and he kind of just helped me. He was a big mentor to me and a big father figure. And he was super hard on me, but like he just taught me, he believed in me, and he was one of kind of the first people outside of my parents to really believe in me and show me the importance of hard work. So he's a huge person in my life.
He's also severely dyslexic. So.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that's I figured that's where you were going with it. But how cool was it to have that connection?
Yeah. So that team that he was on, I think like maybe a third of the kids were on that team were dyslexic, and the coach was dyslexic. So so I think that sort of normalized it for him a little bit, and like he saw that you could be successful and still have those issues. So I think that also really helped him in his confidence.
As a parent, what is it like hearing him talk about it? You see struggle and challenge, and he's meeting it with opportunity and work ethic. Like, what is that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when we just went through the college application process, so to read I mean, I'm going to tear up. It's really, it's just such a long journey, and there are times where you just think, how is this ever going to turn out well? Like, but I was also, I will say, lucky enough to stay at home, and so I knew my kid pretty well, and so I think it's important for parents to know that there's no magic formula, and that you really do need to know your kid and do what's best for you, what you think is best for your kid, because there isn't one way. There's
right.
no. But
can I ask what are some of the challenges that you deal with? Do you still have challenges that you feel like you deal with having dyslexia? You know, like we talk about it, you know, because dyslexia is a lifelong thing. Is there
Yeah.
challenges that you still go through, or have you worked through most of that?
I mean, there's still a lot of challenges, especially like at Hotchkiss. Like, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of homework, and it just kind of takes me like probably twice the amount of time that most kids do. So it's difficult seeing, you know, sometimes when your friends are hanging out together after check-in or like doing stuff in the dorm, but you still have to work. So that's definitely a challenge. Also, when teachers call on me in the classroom to read aloud because we have super small classrooms, that's not fun. But I make it pretty apparent that I have dyslexia at school, just because I'm not really scared to say it, and I think it's something to be proud of. So so a lot of kids know that I have dyslexia in the classroom. So when the teacher picks on me to read, they're kind of like, all right, like it's not that big of a deal, and he's doing his best. So, but other than that, there's not too many struggles.
He's not afraid to make fun of himself, which, you know, I think eases the atmosphere for everybody, you know, around.
Totally. And I think that's helpful, right? To be able to interact with that. Just kind of going through, make sure we don't have any questions on the line. But on that note, what advice would you have for students that are maybe in the opposite end of the spectrum with it?
Yeah.
Maybe they're still feeling the shame, or maybe they haven't really like overcome that. Like, what advice could you offer them from your experience or how you're seeing the world?
Yeah, well, so the perspective I see it, it is a double-edged sword. I mean, there's this side where it can be shameful, you know, not being at a higher reading level, or, you know, struggling at certain stuff that a lot of your peers aren't struggling at. But there's also another end that dyslexia teaches you a lot of values, and it teaches you kind of how to work harder than your peers, how to, like, the importance of dedication, the importance of kind of grit and sticking through everything. So that's the kind of view I took out of it, that it's not a disadvantage, but rather it's a privilege to have this ability to kind of learn these lessons early on, especially at a young age, and just kind of carry that through your life. So that's what I would say to kids who are kind of, you know, have like not as confident in themselves, or struggling to see it in a positive light.
It's amazing. And from your perspective, and I know you kind of addressed it with the parents, but what would you like educators to know about dyslexia, and like how could they maybe be more helpful to the process?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think, you know, awareness is growing, definitely. You know, still getting teachers to, you know, I'm coming from a school district where they just recently invested in the Fontes and Pinnell classroom set. You know, this is probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is the first reading curriculum they bought in like 25 years. And so, you know, to see that happen, it makes me just like cringe, because, you know, they're just going to be invested in, you know, they have to be invested in professional development and everything for years to come. So, you know, there's still a lot of work to do, but I also know that teachers are trying to do workarounds around that. So, you know, I just obviously awareness and knowledge is the key. And, especially in the primary grades, K2. So I'm just, and then also, you know, the accommodations piece, it's definitely a struggle, and it took a while. There are some teachers who are like, no, I'm not sending you. So part of this journey was from Vancouver. He actually went to San Jose for a year to play for the Junior Sharks. So he lived with my sister, and he went to public school down there, and that was probably the most challenging.
I can imagine.
Because they wouldn't accept his 50. So the administration said they wouldn't accept his 504 unless he got retested, and they were in no hurry to retest him. So it was clear that we would have to get outside testing. It was a little bit like they just didn't quite believe it. So, and he was in a position where he was traveling a lot on the weekends because he had to fly to Minnesota and Philadelphia. Like,
sure.
So he needed them to know that he was going to be gone whatever weekend, and he wanted the work ahead of time. So the teachers ended up being remarkable, but the administration there was just horrible. I mean, literally made him take finals while he had a concussion because they wouldn't accept the doctor's note. I mean, like, it was crazy. And I wasn't there to advocate for him. So, that was that was tricky. So I think even in the higher grades, and I think I've said this in some of the teacher trainings, like in middle school, what he started doing in middle school was just to get on Khan Academy, and what was the other one with the Green Brothers?
Crash Course.
Crash Course.
Yeah.
I mean, like physics, he took physics in ninth grade, got through that on Crash Course. So like if teachers can find those resources for kids, the ones that are good quality, and just say, here's an alternate, way to learn this material. So yeah, just always look for, and I think maybe, online school might have helped that, because I know the teachers are accessing or having to access a lot more of that.
Yeah. The adaptive approach, right? Like
Yeah.
finding the alternative ways to show what the students how they can learn or how they can demonstrate their knowledge.
Yeah.
For sure. That's awesome advice. Okay, so the rule is you both get the last word.
Uh-oh.
What you would like the world to know, and it could be regarding dyslexia from a teacher, parent, and you can reiterate some of the things you've already said, but I want to leave you both with the last word. So
You want to go first?
Well, actually, yeah, I see that Jane asked a question, so I'll just answer that.
There you go.
So I think there are a lot of different advantages. I think one of the things that has really stood to me is I think it's also made me a more creative person. I think from the standpoint of just kind of, coming up with your own thoughts, like being able to adapt to different situations. I think that's, I think I excel at that above my peers. Just coming up with new ideas. I mean, I know I'm building an app right now for the learning disabilities community, and so that's actually helped me a lot. Just being creative on different features to add and stuff like that. So I think that's another advantage.
And before you go, I want to it's a great point, Julian, and I think great question from Jane and McCall, also pointing out just there's so many famous people out there, and there's the host of Shark Tanks, and just the vast variety, the eclecticness of the dyslexic community is just so vast. So I think it's important to acknowledge that.
And I also think, to tag along to what he was saying, I mean, I think he ended up in a place like Hotchkiss, but I think he's surrounded by peers who haven't had the obstacles he's had. So I think when opportunities come his way, he's really wanting to grab onto them, and like understands that he's in an advantaged position being at that school, and so he really so that's not my last word, but I just wanted to piggyback.
For sure. No, I think that's important,
because he's just writing a paper on grit, and it's like there's a lot of these a lot of kids where it's come easier for them. They just don't have the grit that others do.
Well, he embodies it. It's awesome that you're writing about the subject.
Yeah. And then I would say just kind of what I said before, like you got to know your kid and parent the kid you have, and not the kid, not my kid, not someone else's kid that you see, like and that takes a lot of time to I think we're closer actually because of everything we've had to go through together, and then also just and try not to be the helicopter. I mean, you're probably going to have to helicopter probably through middle school. Let's be clear. And you're going to have to step in in high school if things go south. But like really try to just meeting with teachers with him, so he sort of sees what that looks like. Model it for your kids, so that they they can see, they know, hopefully, we've been pretty lucky with teachers. He knows that they are actually on their side, and they're all overworked, so just to keep that perspective, and then hopefully you're able to hand over the responsibility of getting accommodations over to to the student, because in the long run that's the biggest problem, that's the biggest challenge, because there aren't that many high school kids who are like, hey, I need extra time,
right.
So and also to get them to think about it beforehand, like email before the test to say, can you keep in mind I need extra time, how are we going to do this, like that kind of stuff. So
absolutely, yeah, no, I think those are such great points, and like huge to emphasize. And Jane, says so it's so valuable. So you should both Julian and your comments are just amazing. So appreciative of you sharing your story, and Julian, congrats on all your success and just both the work that you both did to get to this point. It's awesome. So we really appreciate you taking the time on a Monday night.
Well, it's great to talk to you because you're very inspirational, and I miss seeing you at the monthly meetings because you
I know.
laugh a little bit.
Missing you as well, and hopefully soon we'll be able to connect here as we kind of move through things. But wish you all the best, Julian, and please stay in touch, and we'll be seeing you as you've just continued to do amazing work for the Oregon branch.
Thanks.
Take care.